I am Reed, just a normal 27-year-old guy talking about building wealth and getting your life together in your 20s, my dad. You know, he has been divorced 3 times. He is high earning, super diligent, and pretty good with money. Yet at 50, he is basically starting over financially. It really goes to show. The biggest wealth killers aren't always your expenses, but those life decisions that silently drain your bank account today. Let us chat about some wealth killers to avoid in your 20s and 30s. I promise you at least a few of these you've probably never heard discussed on any other financial channel. The first wealth killer I want to talk about today is staying in the wrong city. This is such an under-discussed topic, but your geographical location. It is honestly one of the most important financial decisions you can make. If you grew up somewhere that doesn't have a lot of industries aligned with your career path, or if the median wage in your city is significantly lower than what you could earn elsewhere, then staying there, well, that is just costing you money. A city that is good for building wealth usually has a few key characteristics. First, it has excellent career prospects. Second, it has high caliber talent. You want to be around people who are just as ambitious as you are, who have similar goals. Choosing a high-paying city to start your career is crucial because in the long run, the compounding effect will help you accumulate massive wealth. Plus, your first starting salary will set the core benchmark for all your future salary negotiations. Let us do a little thought experiment. Suppose you currently live in Kansas City. The median personal annual income there is around $69,000. But if you choose to move to a larger city like Austin or Seattle, the local median income will rise significantly. For instance, the median household annual income in Austin is $90,000, and in San Francisco, it exceeds $135,000. As long as you can effectively control your daily expenses, you can definitely leverage the salary differences between regions to successfully achieve what is called geographical arbitrage. A few years ago, I visited a gold factory in Switzerland of all places. What is really interesting is that it is very close to the Italian border. Even more astonishing, many of the workers in the factory are from Italy, just across the border. They want to work in Switzerland because the salaries there are just so much higher. It is like many Italian workers specifically go to Switzerland to earn the extremely high local wages and then return to their hometowns in Italy where the cost of living is much lower. This is an extreme example, but it is the same principle of geographical arbitrage. Another underestimated factor here is your network. I truly believe that how much money you can earn largely depends on the quality of your network, the people you meet, the opportunities you encounter, and the resources others recommend to you. All of these will be highly dependent on where you actually live. Once you've achieved success, you can always choose to move back home. But trying to build a career in a city lacking opportunities is absolutely a huge wealth killer. Unfortunately, many young people in their 20s or early 30s don't realize this. The second invisible wealth killer is over-reserving. Non-earning emergency funds. Many of you watching this video might fall into this trap because you want to manage your money properly. In a typical emergency fund, you want to save 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses, purely for unforeseen circumstances. This is just in case you lose your job. You have some money to fall back on to help you pay bills, maintain your life, and find a new job. But I personally know some people who have $80,000, $100,000, or even $167,000 saved in high-yield savings accounts simply because, first, it makes them feel more secure, and second, they like having a huge buffer between themselves and catastrophic unexpected events. But if you store 16 to 24 months or even more of living expenses entirely in cash, this excess money will cost you a heavy opportunity cost. Suppose your monthly expenses are $4,000. Then a 6-month emergency fund is $24,000. And a 16-month fund is $64,000. The difference here is $40,000. If this extra $40,000 is just sitting in a high-yield savings account with an annual interest rate of 3.5%. Instead of being invested in the market with a return of about 8 to 9%, it could cost you approximately $145,000 over 20 years. The key is to figure out what your actual needs are after saving enough for a 6-month emergency fund. Insisting on keeping too much cash often reflects a subconscious scarcity mindset. There is nothing wrong with pursuing financial security, but don't overdo it. Next, we're going to talk about a potentially uncomfortable and heavy topic, divorce. Let me just say, friends, I am not married yet. I am not qualified to preach to anyone about relationship issues, but I have watched my dad get divorced 3 times. As I mentioned earlier, I had a front row seat to 2 of those divorces, whether it was his divorce from my mom or the breakdown of his 3rd marriage. Each divorce significantly set him back financially. He often tells me, son, if I hadn't gotten divorced, I'd definitely be a lot richer than I am now. This really proves that choosing the right partner is absolutely one of the most important financial decisions of your life. The divorce rate in the US ranks 6th worldwide, even more startling. The divorce rates for 2nd and 3rd marriages are as high as 60% and 73% respectively. This clearly indicates that people with previous divorce experience have an even higher risk of divorce after remarrying. You might think that with such high divorce rates, everyone should naturally sign a prenuptial agreement to protect themselves, but the reality is not so, as reports indicate that only 15% of married couples sign prenuptial agreements. The main reasons for divorce typically include a lack of commitment to the marriage, infidelity, and long-term financial stress. Additionally, the proportion of early marriages is also very high. So why do we say divorce is such a deadly wealth killer? Obviously, divorce itself is quite expensive. It can easily cost you over $20,000, but in my opinion, the hidden costs of divorce accumulate to be much greater. For example, dividing property. A breakup means remortgaging at high interest rates, or being forced to sell a house in a sluggish market, resulting in significant losses. Even retirement accounts have to be split, requiring complex court procedures. If you withdraw early, you might also face taxes and penalties. There are also moving expenses and the division of various assets, all of which can be mentally exhausting if either of you started a company during the marriage. The situation becomes extremely complicated if you add all the hidden costs to the normal divorce costs incurred through lawyer fees. It could cost you $50,000 to $100,000, and sometimes even more if you have a lot of assets. Ultimately, marriage is actually the most significant financial decision you'll ever make in your life. Choosing the right partner is crucial, otherwise a bad marriage could instantly destroy all the wealth you've worked so hard to accumulate. The next wealth killer we were going to talk about is that vanity of trying to show off your wealth. There is an old saying in the financial world that has been around for decades, keeping up with the Joneses. The reason this saying has lasted so long is because it describes one of the most destructive behaviors we all fall victim to. And that behavior is trying to keep up with your friends on life's journey. It is natural for people to want to compare their financial achievements with what others outwardly possess, like your neighbors, your friends, or even just people on Instagram. Once you fall into the trap of comparing yourself to others, you've already completely lost. What you see on social media are often just other people's carefully curated highlights. As long as the other person cares about their public image, you'll never see the messy and unpleasant realities behind their glamorous lives. The new car you see might be leased, the designer brands might be borrowed, and those luxurious apartments that look glamorous on Instagram might be consuming 60% of that person's after tax income. In Texas, they call this a 30K millionaire, a concept I've actually mentioned in other videos, and that is exactly the kind of person we want to avoid becoming. This type of person, with an annual income of only $30,000, insists on acting like a millionaire, desperately showing off their wealth in life, like those who go to nightclubs, spend all their money to book VIP booths, and then can't even afford a single drink. That is a 30K millionaire. The lesson here is people who show off their wealth often have no money at all, and those who are low-key, they are the truly rich ones. I personally believe that as long as you focus on accumulating for a long time, stay on your own track, and live within your means, you will definitely be richer than those who blindly compare. In my opinion, another big killer in your 20s and 30s is only focusing on salary and ignoring equity, especially when you have the opportunity to get shares. This is particularly critical if you work at a startup or a company that offers equity compensation, but it is also important in a general sense. Many current positions, especially in public companies, startups, or companies preparing to go public, will include equity as part of your total compensation. During salary negotiations, you usually have some flexibility. You can choose a high base salary with fewer options or more options with a lower base salary. Many people choose a high base salary because they want to have cash in hand, which gives them more cash flow, perhaps allowing them to rent a better apartment or slightly improve their quality of life. The key is, once these options successfully vest, their value might even be worth a full 10 years of your salary income. Although this depends on the company's development, and I understand not everyone can work for a giant company, but in most cases, if a medium to large company offers you options and you are optimistic about the company, I personally think you should take more options and less cash, because options at least have room for appreciation. Of course, there is an important prerequisite here. You must do your due diligence on the company itself. See if it really has a future. If your friend just started a new startup in a garage, you might want to think twice about the risks involved, whether you want cash or options when estimating the value of your potential options. I would do two things. First, I would figure out what percentage of the company's total outstanding shares my options represent. If the company gives you 10,000 shares, that number means nothing unless you know the actual total outstanding shares. But if you calculate it and figure out how much your shares are worth in terms of equity, you can get the total number of shares from HR or legal. That way you can figure out your percentage of ownership. Then you can take the second step, which is to figure out how much your company is currently worth, or how much it will be worth if there is a liquidation or IPO in the future if you own 0.1% of the company. And the company eventually goes public with, say, a valuation of $100 million, then your options are worth 0.1% of that, which is $100,000. If you need more practice with this, you might want to watch the show Shark Tank because they often discuss valuation data. I think the more you watch, the more you naturally understand through repetition. The next wealth killer is waiting on the sidelines when it comes to investing. If you are a regular on my channel, you've probably heard me talk about this concept. If we keep waiting on the sidelines with investing, that is absolutely the most stable way not to make money. This assumes the growth of investing $10,000 in the S&P 500 index. From 1996 to 2025, you can see that if you remain fully invested, your balance would be over $192,000. But if you only missed the best 10 days of that period, your returns would be reduced by 56%. And the chart would actually look even worse. So if you missed the best 20 days, your returns would be reduced by 74%. And if you missed the best 30 days, your returns would be reduced by 84%. Your investment growth depends on whether you are in the market on those best performing days. So you really can't afford to miss the peaks unless you are nearing retirement and need to preserve capital. You should try to hold stocks long rather than timing the market. I find that many people always hold cash or wait for a market correction. I have many friends like this, but I think if their returns don't even beat inflation, then their purchasing power will be eroded by inflation itself. For whatever reason, if you don't want to invest, at least while interest rates are still good, you should put your cash in a high yield savings account. Speaking of not so great things, my next big wealth killer is what is called sunk cost loyalty. This wealth killer refers to staying in a job for too long simply because of comfort, familiarity, or liking the colleagues you work with. But loyalty can actually be a double-edged sword. Because if you stay at a company for too long and they only give you, say, a 3 to 5% raise each year, you are not going to make much money at all, especially if your starting salary was low. Suppose after graduating from college, you got a job at, say, Marriott Group, and your starting salary was $60,000 per year. Simply put, they give you a 3% cash raise every 2 years. You worked there for 10 years, and after these 10 years, your annual salary only increased to $70,000. That is really not too big of an increase, especially if you've been working somewhere for 10 years. Personally, I am not the type to run into my boss's office and demand a raise. I was raised to believe that having a job is lucky enough, especially since I graduated during the 2008 financial recession. I am sure many of you can relate, especially with layoffs happening across the US right now. Nobody wants to upset their employer, but you need to understand that companies usually only pay you the minimum to maintain the status quo. If you don't actively fight for a raise or what you deserve, then you are wasting your own tremendous potential value. Perhaps you can try another strategy to escape this wealth killer, which is to change jobs every few years. Especially early in your career, if you can switch jobs, you can reset your base salary during negotiations. This usually leads to a significant increase in salary. According to a LendingTree study, job changers see an average income increase of over 11%, and in some cases even over 30%. The core idea here is that you need to change jobs every 1 to 2 years, so you can either move laterally but get a raise, or stay at the same salary but get promoted. Either way, if you keep doing this, constantly improving your position or salary, by the time you are in your 30s, your salary will have increased several times and your wealth can continue to grow on its own. The next wealth killer we were going to talk about today, you are definitely very familiar with. It is debt, especially high interest debt, and even more so if you fall into bad debt. Of course, borrowing money is fine in some situations. I also believe not all debt is bad, I think. Getting a mortgage to buy a house or taking out student loans for a degree that will pay off in the future. These are planned uses of leverage.